Black CEO asked to give up his seat for a VIP 10 minutes later. He grounded the plane. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Move now. This isn't your seat. The voice cut through the hum of the cabin loud, entitled, "Sharp enough to turn every head in first class." The man speaking was tall, silver-haired, mid-60s, his suit as expensive as his confidence. He pointed down at the black man seated calmly by the window, voice dripping superiority. "This seat's reserved for the company's VIP. You don't belong here." Michael Cole didn't flinch. He looked up slowly, his gaze steady, unreadable. His charcoal suit caught the cabin light pressed, quiet, perfect. He spoke once, softly. "Is that so?" The old man scoffed. "Yes, that's so. People like you should know where they're supposed to sit." A few passengers inhaled sharply, half shocked, half curious. The flight attendant froze mid-step, glancing from one man to the other. She tried to smile it off. "Gentlemen, please, let's keep things calm." But the older man didn't stop. "I've flown this airline for 20 years. I'm a shareholder. That seat isn't for employees." Michael's hand rested lightly on his boarding pass. The name printed in bold read, "Michael Cole, Priority 1 Clearance." But he didn't raise it, didn't argue. He simply exhaled, slow, controlled, like a man watching a storm he had already predicted. The attendant whispered, "Sir, if you could just—" Michael turned to her, voice low and steady. "If I could what?" Her throat tightened. "If you could temporarily move while we verify." The word verify hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew what it meant. It didn't mean verify the system. It meant verify him. The old man chuckled. "There you go. She's just doing her job. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Michael looked at him, just looked, and for a moment the older man faltered, as if the weight of calm itself was too much to bear. A few seats away, a woman whispered to her husband, "He's handling it so well." Her husband murmured, "He shouldn't have to." The cabin door closed. The engines hummed. But inside that narrow space, time had stopped. Michael finally spoke. "Tell your VIP I'll only move for one reason." The old man frowned. "And what's that?" He adjusted his cufflinks, voice barely above a whisper. "When I'm done flying this company myself." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. The attendant blinked. "Excuse me?" Michael leaned back in his seat, eyes on the clouds beyond the window. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "You'll understand in about 10 minutes. The old man rolled his eyes. "Unbelievable. Another one of those attitude types." He turned away, muttering to himself. But the attendant kept glancing at the boarding pass. At the barcode, she hadn't yet scanned the one with a strange code in the corner. ARO Global Executive Clearance. She didn't know that the man she'd just asked to move was the owner of the skies she worked under. As the seatbelt sign flickered on, Michael closed his eyes and smiled faintly. 10 minutes, he murmured again, the words barely a whisper. Outside, the morning light slid across the tarmac like gold over steel, bright, steady, and about to change everything. The plane climbed into silence. Engines roared, but the air inside felt tight like a room holding its breath. Michael Cole sat still, hands resting lightly on the armrest, his gaze fixed on the clouds beyond the glass. The old man 2 rows ahead kept glancing back, smirking to himself, whispering to the flight attendant as if the entire cabin were his audience. "Unbelievable," the man muttered again. "They'll let anyone up here these days." The attendant tried to laugh it off, but her face was pale. She'd seen the name on the boarding pass. The system had flagged it. Priority 1, Executive Authorization. But she didn't understand what it meant. Not yet. At the front, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds. We're cruising at 35,000 feet. Smooth flight ahead." Michael looked at his watch. The second hand swept past the 10-minute mark. He took out his phone, not the personal one, but a slim black device with no branding. He unlocked it with his thumb. The screen glowed faintly, revealing a single app icon labeled Orion. He tapped it once. A code field appeared. He entered MCO 427, Executive Clearance Request Groundside Hold. He hit send. No sound, no drama. Just a tiny vibration and a single word flashing back, AUTASTized. In the cockpit, a quiet ping appeared on the captain's console. Ground request received. Reynolds frowned. That can't be right. The co-pilot leaned in. It's marked from Aero Global HQ. Reynolds blinked. That's our parent company. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. Down in the terminal, a controller's voice came through the radio. Flight 409. Hold pattern. Executive override initiated. Do not proceed to assigned altitude. Repeat, do not proceed. The pilots exchanged glances. What's going on? Back in first class, the older man was laughing again. Oblivious. Can you believe the nerve of him? People need to know their place. Michael didn't look up. He simply turned his phone over, face down on the tray table, and adjusted his cufflinks. The flight attendant returned, whispering nervously. Sir, I may have made a mistake earlier. About your seat, it appears your code is unusual. Michael met her eyes. Unusual? She swallowed hard. It's showing as an executive authorization. I think it's linked to ownership credentials. He nodded slightly, almost kindly. Then you already know how this ends. The intercom crackled again. The pilot's voice sounded tense now. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to return to the gate due to a procedural review. Please remain seated. Gasps spread through the cabin. The old man's smile vanished. Wait, what? You can't. We just took off. Michael finally turned to him, calm as ever. Sir, he said, voice smooth, unshaken. You asked me to move for a VIP. He paused. You're about to meet one. The engines began to whine lower as the plane slowly descended. Out the window, the horizon tilted, city lights glimmering below. The older man's face went pale. Who the hell are you? Michael looked forward, eyes steady, tone quiet as steel. The man who decides if this flight leaves the ground. He picked up his phone again, swiped the screen, and pressed a single command. Confirm groundside. The cabin lights flickered as the plane banked left. A child began to cry softly. No one spoke. As the aircraft leveled off and began its slow return, Michael sat motionless, the eye of the storm. Outside, clouds parted like curtains, revealing the runway lights below. A trail of gold and white leading him home, to justice, and to silence that spoke louder than any apology ever could. The landing gear unfolded with a distant metallic groan. Passengers stiffened in their seats. The descent was too soon, too smooth. To be mechanical failure, it felt deliberate. The captain's voice came on again, tight and cautious. Ladies and gentlemen, due to an executive directive from Aero Global Holdings, this flight has been ordered to return to the gate. We apologize for the inconvenience. The words executive directive hung in the air like thunder without lightning. People started whispering. Phones lit up. The man who demanded Michael's seat turned in disbelief. Executive what? Michael didn't answer. He didn't need to. The attendant stood frozen, half bowed, watching him like a student realizing she'd been in the presence of the professor all along. The plane's nose tilted, angling toward the runway. Through the window, the morning haze shimmered above the tarmac like liquid gold. Michael's reflection stared back at him, calm, unreadable, dangerous in its restraint. He took a slow breath, and in that exhale was every boardroom that had doubted him, every handshake that had been delayed until a lighter hand appeared. The aircraft touched down without a bump. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reynolds turned to his co-pilot. Who the hell can issue an executive directive midair? The co-pilot's tablet pinged. Sender, Aero Global Holdings HQ. Subject, immediate compliance required. Executive, M. Cole. The captain's voice cracked. M, Cole, as in Michael Cole? The co-pilot nodded slowly. The Michael Cole, founder CEO, in the cabin, murmurs rose to panic. Someone said, "Wait, is that him?" Another whispered, "That's the man from Forbes, the guy who bought Sky Vista last year." The old man who'd mocked him turned pale, trying to steady himself with the armrest. "That's impossible. I didn't know." Michael finally turned his head, just enough for their eyes to meet. "You never asked." The attendant approached him cautiously. "Mr. Cole, what do you want us to do now?" Michael straightened his cuffs, voice measured. "Exactly what should have been done 10 minutes ago. Treat every passenger with dignity." In memory just down, he looked around the cabin, at the faces that had once stared at him with judgment, now filled with shame and curiosity. No one on this plane is above respect. The plane rolled to a stop. The engines whirred down to a hush. Security vehicles approached from the terminal, lights flashing silently. The captain's voice returned, trembling slightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We'll be taxiing back under direct supervision of Aero Global headquarters." The old man leaned forward, whispering hoarsely, "You grounded the flight." Michael adjusted his tie. "No," he said softly. "I grounded arrogance." Silence. The kind of silence that fills a room when hierarchy collapses. As the aircraft door opened, a flood of golden light poured in. Michael stood, collecting his briefcase with unhurried grace. The attendant stepped aside, head lowered. He stopped at the exit, looked back once at the passengers, at the man who'd insulted him, at the people who had watched and said nothing. "You see," he said quietly, "flying first class isn't about where you sit. It's about how you carry yourself while you're seated." Then he stepped into the light. Outside, the terminal buzzed with motion, corporate staff waiting, cameras flashing, executives rushing to greet the man whose single decision had just cost the company millions but saved its integrity. Michael didn't slow down. He walked past them all, through the noise, through the flash of cameras, through the echoes of his own power. Behind him, the plane stood still, a monument of suspended arrogance. And somewhere in that silence, a voice from the control tower whispered into the headset. "Grounding confirmed. CEO on site. Is not a Brappen. Valitis prappers in a blows. Is no degrees in os." The morning air outside the jetway was thick with whispers. Cameras flashed, but no one dared to speak to him directly. Michael Cole walked through the corridor like it belonged to him, and in truth, it did. Every tile, every sign, every flight manifest was part of a network that answered to his name. Behind him, the flight attendants trailed in uneasy silence. The older man, the so-called VIP, lingered at the gate, clutching his briefcase, face pale as wax. The arrogance had drained from him, replaced by a hollow confusion that comes only when a man realizes he mistook authority for ownership. "Mr. Cole," a voice called. A woman in a Navy business suit rushed forward. Morgan, Aero Global's head of operations. Her badge caught the light. "Sir, they just called from HQ. The board wants a statement before the press spins this." Michael didn't break stride. "They can wait." And Ladov setting dollars. She fell into step beside him. "Sir, grounding an active flight under Executive Code MCO 427. That protocol hasn't been used since I wrote it," he finished, voice calm, eyes fixed ahead. They reached a glass wall overlooking the runway. The grounded plane sat in the distance, engines quiet, a silver monument to misplaced ego. Morgan exhaled. "Media's already calling it the VIP flight incident. Do you want to issue an apology?" Michael turned to her, not angry, just steady. "For what?" She hesitated. "For grounding the flight." He looked back at the plane. "Apologies are for mistakes. This was a correction. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. Security teams moved past them, discreetly escorting the remaining passengers. The older man finally approached, face drawn, voice small. "Mr. Cole, I had no idea who you were." Michael didn't turn. "You didn't need to. You just needed to know who you were." The man swallowed, eyes darting. I'm sorry." I spoke out of turn. Michael faced him fully now. His tone was even, almost gentle. "You didn't speak out of turn. You spoke in character. That's what made it real." The man blinked. unsure whether it was forgiveness or indictment. Michael's gaze softened just a fraction. Next time, remember, status doesn't give you altitude. He turned away, leaving the man standing small against the wide glass. Morgan watched the exchange, half in awe, half unsettled. You could have humiliated him publicly, she said. Instead, you gave him a lesson. Michael's eyes stayed on the plane. Humiliation doesn't teach, reflection does. They stood in silence. Beyond the glass, ground crews were refueling other aircraft. The world moving on, but Flight 409 remained untouched, waiting for permission that would never come until Michael allowed it. A young journalist approached cautiously, microphone trembling. "Mr. Cole," she said, "people online are calling this the most decisive act of corporate justice in years. What do you want them to take from it?" Michael looked into the camera lens as if speaking to everyone who'd ever been told to move. "That dignity isn't granted," he said slowly. "It's exercised." The reporter lowered the mic, stunned by the calm weight of the words. Michael nodded politely, signaling to Morgan. "Prepare a meeting with the Flight Operations Board. We're revising the ethics protocol. Effective immediately." Morgan blinked. "You want to rewrite the policy today?" 10 minutes was enough to ground a plane, he said. "It's enough to ground a culture." As they walked away, sunlight spilled through the terminal glass, painting long golden lines across the floor. Each step measured, silent, deliberate. The sound of one man rewriting power with poise. The boardroom was all glass and silence. From the 47th floor, the skyline stretched like a mosaic of control towers, contracts, and consequences. Morning light fractured through the windows, catching the chrome edges of a long table filled with executives who suddenly looked smaller than their titles. Michael Cole entered without a word. The door shut behind him with a clean, magnetic click. His footsteps echoed once, twice, then stopped. No one breathed. At the far end, the chairman of operations cleared his throat. "Michael, this incident, it's all over the news. The grounding has already cost us $7 million in delays." Michael placed his leather folder on the table, opened it to a single sheet. "And how much would it cost us to keep pretending respect is optional?" No one answered. He glanced around the room, familiar faces, nervous eyes. These were men and women who ran airlines, not atmospheres. They managed profit, not people. "You all saw the footage," he said quietly. "One man demanded that another man move because of his color, his clothes, his calm. And your staff let it happen." "Sir," one executive said, "our flight attendants followed procedure. They were just trying to avoid escalation." Michael's gaze shifted. Escalation happens when empathy ends. Procedure without principle is just performance. A hush spread across the room. Morgan stepped forward from the side of the table, tablet in hand. "We've compiled public reaction, sir. 90% support your decision. Hashtags like #grounded for dignity and #Michael Cole effect are trending globally." Michael didn't smile. "Public approval isn't the point. Transformation is." He walked toward the window. The reflection of the city moved across his face like liquid steel. "People think we fly planes," he said softly. "We don't. We fly values. We just forgot that somewhere along the runway." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. He turned, facing the board. "Effective immediately, I'm implementing a new protocol, the Equal Skies Directive. No passenger, regardless of status, rank, or income, will be prioritized over another human being's dignity. Period." A murmur ran through the table. The chief of finance frowned. "Sir, that's radical. It could complicate our VIP partnerships." Michael tilted his head slightly. "Then perhaps we partnered with the wrong kind of people." Silence again. "The kind that cuts." Morgan watched him, the quiet pride in her eyes mirroring the steadiness in his tone. "This isn't about punishing staff," he continued. "It's about retraining vision. Every person who wears our badge will undergo new leadership ethics from the ground crew to the flight deck. If they can't honor that, they don't fly for us." He paused, letting the weight settle. A single heartbeat filled the room. Then another. The chairman leaned back, exhaling. "Michael, what you did out there grounding that plane, it made people listen. But if we follow through on this, we change everything about how this company operates." Michael nodded once. "Good. He reached for his pen and signed the directive at the bottom of the page. The ink line cut through the silence like a runway light in fog. Then, softly, "Change doesn't wait for permission." He handed the paper to Morgan. "Publish it," she nodded. "Yes, sir." As she stepped out, the room fell back into quiet awe. One of the older executives whispered to another, "He just turned a scandal into a standard." Through the glass, the city shimmered 1,000 windows catching the light. Michael watched it all, hands in his pockets, voice barely audible. Respect isn't expensive, but forgetting it, that costs everything. And the camera lingered on his reflection, the faint line of sunlight across his face. A man who'd learned that justice could land softly and still shake the world beneath it. A week later, the world had changed, or at least started to. The Equal Skies Directive had gone live in every terminal across the country. Posters lined airport walls with a single message printed beneath the Aero Global logo: "Every seat deserves respect." Michael's face wasn't on it, but his presence was everywhere in the tone of new training videos, in the nervous posture of managers relearning humility, and in the quiet gratitude of flight attendants who finally had permission to stand for what was right. Inside a Los Angeles hangar converted into a training center, dozens of staff sat in rows, watching a screen. On it, a short clip replayed the moment the flight had been grounded. No names, no sensational edit, just a calm narration. Sometimes leadership means stopping motion to start meaning. At the back of the room, Michael stood silently beside Morgan, observing. She leaned over and whispered, "They're calling it the most transformative policy shift in commercial aviation." He didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the screen, on the faces of the crew who watched themselves learning, maybe for the first time, what respect looked like in practice. When the video ended, he stepped forward. The room straightened instantly. "You don't need to remember my name," he said. "You need to remember what you represent. Every time someone boards one of our planes, they're trusting you with something heavier than luggage: their dignity. Don't ever drop it." Silence filled the space, deeper than applause. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Morgan's phone buzzed. "Sir," she said, scanning the message. "You might want to see this." She handed him the screen. A breaking news banner scrolled across it. "Former passenger issues public apology to Aero Global CEO, says the experience changed his life." Michael glanced at it, expression unchanged. "The man from the flight?" Morgan nodded. "He's trending now. People are calling his post the wake-up seat." He smiled faintly. "Redemption takes longer than grounding, but I'll take it." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. Later that evening, he returned to his office high above the city, where the glass met the clouds. The skyline glittered like data. Planes moved below him in quiet order, tiny vessels crossing invisible agreements of trust. On his desk sat a small envelope, handwritten. No title, no corporate header. Just a name: Lauren, flight attendant, 409. He opened it. Inside, a single line: "Thank you for grounding more than a flight. You grounded arrogance, including mine." He folded the note carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. No smile, just a slow breath, satisfaction mixed with something softer, almost sorrowful. Morgan entered. "Media's asking for interviews. CNN, Forbes, even the FAA wants a comment." Michael shook his head. "Let the work speak first." She hesitated, then added, "There's talk you're being nominated for the Global Integrity Award." He looked out the window at the planes slicing through the night. "Integrity shouldn't be something people vote on," he said. "It should just fly." Morgan watched him for a moment, then nodded quietly. "Yes, sir." The city lights pulsed in rhythmic gold below, like the steady heartbeat of reform. For the first time in years, Michael allowed himself to sit back, loosen his tie, and breathe. He thought of his mother, who used to save for months just to afford one plane ticket home. He thought of the gate agent who once told her she was in the wrong line. And now, decades later, her son had rewritten the lines entirely. Outside, a jet lifted into the night sky, tail light glowing faintly red, the color of consequence, of courage, of change. Michael watched it climb until it disappeared into the dark. Then, softly to himself, "Now that's how we rise." 2 months later, the world had adjusted, or tried to. The Equal Skies Directive had gone global. From London to Lagos, from Dubai to Detroit, airlines began rewriting their policies to match Aeroglobal's. Some did it for publicity, others out of shame. But none could deny the movement's impact. Michael Cole had become more than a CEO. He was a symbol, not because he'd shouted or threatened or sued, but because he'd simply stopped the plane. At a global aviation conference in Geneva, reporters crowded the marble lobby like a living tide. The banners read, "Leadership Beyond Altitude." Michael stepped onto the stage wearing a charcoal suit, same quiet precision as always. Morgan followed just behind, clipboard in hand. As the cameras clicked, the moderator leaned toward the mic. "Mr. Cole, you've been called the most influential CEO in aviation history. What made you ground that flight?" Michael adjusted the mic, pausing long enough to make silence an answer. Then, "Because sometimes," he said, "you don't climb higher by taking off. You climb by refusing to move until everyone can rise with you." The room fell completely still. He continued, voice low but carrying. "Leadership isn't a takeoff. It's a checkpoint, and every decision we make should pass through the same gate. Is it profitable or is it right? If those answers ever differ, only one deserves clearance." The audience erupted in applause, not loud but sustained, genuine. When he stepped off the stage, Morgan smiled. "You know they're going to quote that line for years." Michael shook his head gently. "They should quote the silence that came before it. That's where the truth lives." Later that evening, he walked through a quiet airport terminal in Zurich. No cameras, no crowds, just the soft announcement tones echoing through glass and marble. A janitor polishing the floor glanced up and nodded respectfully. "Mr. Cole," he said softly, accent thick, "you changed the way my boss talks to us. It's better now." Michael smiled. "That's all I needed to hear." He continued toward the lounge, carrying nothing but a slim briefcase. Through the large windows, a Sky Vista plane prepared for boarding tail logo glinting gold under the runway lights. The words, "Respect flies first," painted on its side. He stood there for a long moment, watching the crew assist passengers. They smiled, not forced, but genuine, guiding a mother with a stroller, greeting an elderly man, helping a nervous child find her seat. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Michael. A soft chime sounded behind him. Flight 427 to New York now boarding. Michael turned. Same flight number as that morning 2 months ago. Different destination this time, no lesson needed. He boarded quietly, greeted by a smiling attendant. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cole." He paused, recognizing her face. Lauren, the flight attendant from Flight 409. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. "Thank you for giving me another chance," she said. Michael met her gaze, warm but firm. "You gave it to yourself." She nodded, tears barely visible. "We'll make you proud this time." He smiled faintly. "You already did." She guided him to his seat 2A, the same one that had once sparked a global shift. The engines hummed to life, low and steady. As the plane lifted off, Michael looked down at the network of lights below, tiny, flickering, connected. He thought about how power used to mean altitude, but now meant responsibility. At 35,000 feet, he closed his eyes, not to rest, but to listen. The cabin was peaceful. No arguments, no assumptions, just the hum of progress. He opened his laptop, typed a few words into a blank document. Next, Equal Skies Education Fund scholarships for underrepresented youth in aviation. He leaned back, watching the clouds blur past. Justice, he thought, wasn't an event. It was maintenance daily, quiet, relentless. And as the plane pierced through the night sky, Michael Cole, the man who once refused to move, was now leading the world forward. Not from the ground, but from GR. 6 months later, Aeroglobal had become more than an airline. It had become a movement. The company's training centers were now called Equal Skies Academies, and their motto, "Respect flies first," had been adopted by 10 other major airlines. Government regulators were referencing the Cole Standard as a model for ethical compliance in corporate transport. But Michael Cole didn't spend his days in front of cameras anymore. He'd turned inward, back to the architecture of systems, not the theater of headlines. To him, true reform wasn't what made the news. It was what lasted after people stopped talking. One morning, he arrived at the academy in Atlanta for an unannounced inspection. No security, no entourage. Just him and Morgan, walking quietly through the hangar where new recruits were training. Inside, a group of flight attendants practiced role-play scenarios, how to handle conflicts, how to de-escalate prejudice without surrendering authority. On the projection screen, the words glowed, "Procedure begins with perception." Michael stopped near the back. A young woman was leading the session, confident voice, calm tone. He recognized her immediately. Lauren? She'd been promoted to head instructor. "Every passenger is a story," Lauren said, pacing the room. "And the difference between conflict and connection is how we choose to read that story. You don't have to fix bias overnight. You just have to refuse to serve it." The room nodded. A few even clapped softly. Michael folded his arms, a quiet smile forming. Morgan leaned in. "You didn't tell her you were coming." "She didn't need to know," he replied. "If respect depends on who's watching, it's not real." Lauren turned and froze when she noticed him, her face flushed with both pride and surprise. "Mr. Cole," she breathed. "I didn't know you'd—" He raised a hand, stopping her gently. "You're doing good work. Don't let me interrupt. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Michael. After the session, Lauren approached him near the window overlooking the runway. "Sir, may I say something?" Michael nodded. "I think about that flight every day," she said. "About how I froze when I should have spoken up. About how you didn't humiliate me when you could have. You let me learn instead." Michael studied her for a moment, then said softly, "That's because justice without compassion is just punishment. You learned. That's enough." She hesitated. "Sometimes I still feel guilty." He shook his head. "Guilt keeps you looking backward. Growth makes you look forward. Guess which one flies?" Lauren smiled through tears. "Thank you, sir." Michael looked back at the runway. "Don't thank me. Make sure no one ever has to thank you for doing what's right." Later that afternoon, he sat in a quiet conference room overlooking the training field. Morgan entered with a digital report. "Preliminary metrics are in," she said. "Since the directive launched, customer satisfaction has risen 38%. Complaints of discriminatory service dropped by half. And staff retention is at an all-time high." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Dignity pays better than marketing." Morgan chuckled. "Apparently," she hesitated, then added, "but there's something else. The UN just invited you to speak at the Global Ethics Forum. They want to discuss expanding the coal directive into other industries." And reading that 7, he turned toward the glass, the sunlight tracing the edge of his face. "If we have to make policies to remind people to act human, then maybe the problem isn't policy. It's memory." Morgan frowned slightly. "Meaning? People forget what it feels like to be dismissed," he said, "until they're the ones being ignored. The goal isn't to make rules, it's to make remembering impossible." For a moment, neither spoke. The rhythmic hum of engines outside filled the room, a reminder of the world still moving, still learning. Morgan finally broke the silence. "You know, they keep calling you the grounded CEO." Michael smirked faintly. "Good. The world has enough people chasing altitude." He stood, walking to the window where a plane was just lifting off. Its shadow moved across the runway, clean, fleeting, beautiful. "Everyone wants to rise," he said softly, "but not everyone knows how to stay level when they do." That evening, as he left the academy, a group of trainees stood near the door. One of them called out nervously, "Mr. Cole, can we ask, why didn't you just fire everyone that day? The ones who disrespected you?" Michael paused, the golden light catching his features. He looked at the young man and replied, "Because firing ignorance doesn't teach wisdom. You don't fix bias by burning it. You outgrow it." The group went silent. Then the young man said quietly, "That's the kind of power we want, sir." Michael smiled. "Then earn it by staying calm when the world isn't." He walked out into the fading sun, the hum of departing jets vibrating through the ground. Somewhere above him, one of his planes crossed the sky, the golden tail gleaming against the blue. And beneath that endless horizon, Michael Cole, the man once told to give up his seat, had built something far greater than an airline. He'd built a culture where no one ever had to move again just to be seen. Ace. Months later, at Gate 12 of JFK Airport, a small bronze plaque gleamed under the morning light. Seat 2A, dedicated to Michael Cole, who taught the world that respect never boards last. Passengers passed by quietly, some stopping to read, others simply nodding. Through the glass above the runway, a Sky Vista plane rose into the clouds, its golden tail reflecting the words, "Respect flies first." And somewhere in that rising light, calm and unseen, Michael Cole kept flying not above people, but with them.